to address this August gathering, which consists of all spectrum experts. I find myself, I think, the least knowledgeable person on spectrum here. When we talk about spectrum, and the topic which probably has been given to me is spectrum strategy to accelerate 5G rollout. So this topic need to be slightly changed from accelerate the 5G rollout. Instead of that, it should be accelerate effective 5G adoption. Because rollout anyway would happen. The operators will do it. They will put the towers, they will put BTSs, fiber, connect, and all those things. How do we have effective 5G adoption by everyone? So, since the time the telecom network started evolving, there used to be a race to catch customers with wires, and we were doing coverage with the help of wires and trying to reach to every customer. Then came the era of 2G, where we started talking about coverage. So 1C was there, and from 1C we actually moved to 2C of the spectrum. So the second element which came was the capacity. So how do we meet the capacity in addition to the coverage, so that the effective services are provided to the consumers? And with 4G, Jio has demonstrated that, how the capacity is created. Today, Jio carries 10% of the world's mobile traffic. In one single network, we are catering almost 45 crore customers, with on the average around 20 GB per customer per month kind of a traffic. So that's the kind of capacity which had been created in 4G network. So this was the second dimension which came in when 4G came. So we used to talk about two C's of spectrum. So coverage, and capacity. With 5G, there is third dimension, third C is getting added up, which is convergence. So it is not about now mobile services. It is not about creating a terrestrial network. It is not about having an access network. So the access and backhaul have merged. Even the standards, the 3GPP standards and other standards have merged that. We have now integrated access and backhaul. So there is absolutely no difference between access or backhaul. We don't know what to call access, what to call backhaul. So that's one level of convergence which has happened. The second level of convergence which has happened is convergence between communication and broadcasting. So what is communication and what is broadcasting? Probably after a few years, we will not have even the difference between the two. All broadcasting would be carried over the communication channels. So today also with OTT platforms, majority of the broadcasting content is viewed on telecommunication network. So there is no difference between now a broadcasting network and a telecommunication network. So both are same, both have converged. The third convergence which is happening is between mobile and fixed line. So with FWP or FWT, with fixed wireless terminal put outside your window, and then whole of your house connected on Wi-Fi internally. So whether it's a mobile network or whether it's a fixed line network, that convergence has happened and will happen. With 5G, especially we using millimeter wave, all the networks would be the hybrid network, which would be fully converged fixed mobile network. And the fourth convergence which is going to happen, we'll see with the old BTS, now we call E node B and G node B, flying in the sky in the form of satellite or NTN networks. So the days are not ahead when we'll see the both networks getting fully converged. At the standards level, at the specification levels, these networks have already been converged. In release 17 or release 18, we will have 5G over satellite, 5G through satellite, G node B flying in the sky, or the bent pipe, etc. Gone are those days. So we'll have 5G in the sky, 5G through satellite, through NTN networks, 5G through terrestrial network. Consumer would move from one place to the other place without realizing whether he is being served from a terrestrial network or being served from a satellite network, or is being served from a wireline fixed network when he enters into the house with the same number, with the same call, with the same session. He'll experience all three networks. So that's the level of convergence which is happening. So what does this require? How will this convergence happen? So at technology level, this convergence has already happened. And it's in few years, all of us are, I think, more educated and more knowledgeable than me, know that at the technology level, it's happened, it's done. At the regulation level, this has to happen. How the spectrum is allocated, how the spectrum is assigned, how the spectrum is used. I think that's probably in next 2 days. I hope that most of us would be debating around it, that do we still need to continue with the artificial barriers? Those barriers were actually genuine barriers, but now that boundary has blurred. Do we still need to continue with the barrier called an access spectrum and a backhaul spectrum? Do we still need to continue with the barrier called a satellite spectrum and a terrestrial spectrum? Or should the spectrum be used in a flexible manner? So you allocate to a company who wants to build the network. Let them build the network the way they want. Let them self-coordinate. So that's the kind of, I think, need which arises now. This is all coming from consumer perspective, outside-in perspective, not how we used to regulate the spectrum, how we used to allocate the spectrum, how consumer want to see the services, how the networks would be built to serve those customers, to provide the services which they want. So if we see from outside, if we move from consumer towards operator and then to manufacturer and then to regulator, we'll see that there is a convergence which has happened and convergence which is required, and the spectrum also need to be assigned, regulation also need to be framed in such a way that the spectrum can actually provide or cater to the converged networks without being actually having the shackles of the regulatory barriers in the form of access, backhaul, etc., etc. One more thing which, now coming back to the topic which was given to me on the rollout or effective 5G adoption. So this actually is also related to the second C which I talked about, capacity. So now operators have been allocated approximately 300 megahertz of 350, 360 megahertz of spectrum in C-band, which is the anchor band for 5G, and some spectrum in millimeter wave, which would be the capacity band. But how much it's required? India has a population density of around 490 people per square kilometer, approximately 500 people per square kilometer, as compared to majority of the country, like US would have 50 people per square kilometer, Russia would have only 5-10 people per square kilometer. So there is huge difference in the capacity requirement. You can't have a cell size with infinite cell radius to have the coverage with one cell. You can't have infinite number of cells installed at any place to create infinite capacity, because then cells starts interfering with each other. So there has to be a mixture, because all this is physics, so we can't preach each other. So the physics actually tells that if you have to have that much of capacity, how much spectrum is required at every square kilometer. So earlier the demand used to be, a customer was using 1 GB or 100 MB in a cell in a month. Now they are using 20 GB in a cell in a month, with say an average speed of 5 to 10 Mbps on 4G. Once we start moving those customers to 500 Mbps or 1 Gbps intended, because we should, in 5G we have to aim that every customer should get 1 Gbps. When we move the customers to that kind of a speed, the capacity requirement would be 20 to 50 fold than what today we have. So can we actually meet the capacity with 100 megahertz of spectrum in C-band? The answer would be no. That operators would, the moment you roll out, you will start seeing when the handsets moves to 5G, when every customer starts using it, use cases starts kicking in, we will start seeing the networks getting congested. and then the more and more spectrum would be required. So where the next anchor spectrum will come from, I think from the first and the most obvious band which becomes is 3.7 to 4.2, which is being used for teleport services by satellite operators. The other is from 5.9 to 7.1, which typically we call 6 gigahertz. Those are the two bands which have to be, I think, probably immediately vacated for IMT or for 5G. And if those are not done, probably we'll see 5G running like 4G. Because consumers will, who would be the loser? Loser would be consumers, because they will have 5G handset without the sufficient capacity which they require. And all that cannot be met with the higher capacity bands, because there the mobility, full mobility will not be there, capacity may not be there. Of course, for capacity purpose, a lot has to be offloaded to millimeter band, where all the bands which have been harmonized for the IMT, be it 26 gigahertz band, or it is the bands which are going to be like 28 gigahertz band, 37 to 42, and then 40, 47, 52 band, etc. All these need to be, I think, aligned. That's I don't want to take away the agenda in the next session, which is on the roadmap, but that actually the roadmap has to cover that to meet the capacity which would be required for India. India is a special case. It's unlike many other countries, because our capacity requirement is 10 times more than the most advanced country in the world. So keeping that in mind, our spectrum requirement would also be 10 times more than the most advanced country in the world. So keeping that in mind, I think we need to have a different approach and get more and more spectrum vacated and align it for IMT, so that operators, the telecom operators, whether these are access operators or ISPs or any other operator, they can plan their network, they can plan their business accordingly. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. मेरा आप सबको सादर नमस्कार. Honorable guests, representative from the government departments, distinguished members from telecom industry, academia, learned colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Well, on behalf of Secretary Telecom, I would like to first of all convey my thanks to ITU APT for allowing us to participate and hosting such a nice conference, today's conference. I am very excited and pleased to be here in this conference. As you all appreciate, that spectrum is a most valuable natural resource. You may call it as an asset also. It is not only valuable, it's not only valuable, but it's an asset also. In fact, I believe that it is one of the most precious gift of God. As Mr. Sanjay ji told that it was even used during the time of Mahabharata. So Department of Telecom, with the making available new frequency band in mid-band and millimeter wave band to the telecom industry, thus has opened new era in the telecommunication. With the successful launch of 5G services in India by our Honorable Prime Minister, government is putting all out efforts to enable the adoption of 5G use cases across various sectors, be it industry, agriculture, education, medicine, socio-economic growth. In fact, it is a gateway to digitization in industry and digital economy. It is estimated that the Indian economy can have an economic benefit of $1 trillion by 2035. The spectrum is hero behind all this. While Indian administration is committed to the following: spectrum availability and allocation among various radio services with reasonable certainty to bridge adoption lag and maximizing socio-economic benefits, providing high-speed bandwidth, broadband through various access technologies to address digital divide, deploy spectrum-efficient technologies by all stakeholders, including government, TSPs, entrepreneurs, and whatnot. Encourage spectrum sharing and optimal coexistence among various radio services, providing outline for national studies related to radio frequency spectrum, position India as hub of wireless technology, R&D and manufacturing, attract investment in exploiting spectrum. Be flexible and dynamic to incorporate new kinds of radio services in the existing band and enter C allocation of bands to prioritize relevant radio services. Also, as highlighted by Mr. Rawat, address the security concerns, national security concerns, as well as data security concerns of the society from the outside country. So we are also committed to address those issues. The policy objective on spectrum management as per National Digital Communication Policy, NDCP 2013 to 2018, is recognizing spectrum as a key natural resource for public benefit to achieve India's socio-economic goals, ensure transparency in allocation, and optimize availability and utilization. I am not going into much detail of the intricacies of various spectrum bands, but we are committed to have the best utilization of spectrum. The 5th generation 5G wireless communication has been seen as a gateway to digitization in industry. As Mr. Gandhi highlighted, the importance of 6 gigahertz band making available. With the start of implementation of 5G technology, telecom community in various parts of the world has started to actively look at emerging new use cases, future technologies to support such use cases and requirement for 6G. A technology innovation group on 6G has been constituted to bring our vision, mission, goal, and roadmap for India in 6G space. DOT is taking a constructive and collaborative approach involving industry, TSP, academia, research institutes, defense, etc., security agencies to identify the areas of work and build synergy to innovate, create IPRs, standardization, contribute to the global standards, create specifications, technical regulations, run pilot projects, manufacture, test, and supply at a global scale to enable new technologies beyond 5G through inviting new radio technologies and development of new regulations. I am quite sure, and I believe that this 2 days conference will really yield a wonderful results. And certainly it will address not only the issues pertaining to spectrum and the best use of spectrum, but also look at the effective and secure utilization of spectrum, which thus would enable not only economical growth of the country, but also social reforms and social growth. In this context, I would just like to add one more line to Mr. Rawat's, as Mr. Rawat said that during Mahabharata, Sanjay could see from a distance using the spectrum. Maybe technology was different, but it was a technology. And thus, Bhagavad Gita was spoken. So I also feel that with the advent of this technology, we should also look at the social challenges which are being faced with the new technologies, and the use of that be done for a proper and healthy use so that we ultimately become happy. Thank you.
Yes, our sincere appreciation to IAFI, Chairman Mr. Dua, and the President BB, Mr. Bhatia, as well as Secretary General Dr. Gupta, who have, I know them quite a long time. And also I would like to congratulate India for being elected for ITU Council members, as well as Madam Revati to be elected as a member of Radio Regulation Board with the top vote at the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference in Romania. So this is the first time to visit India in 10 years. So as the introduction, I used to work at the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communication in Japan, and at that time there, I think still is, a bilateral meeting between India and Japan, and I used to come to India occasionally. So I'm very glad to be able to visit India, because the last 10 years I repeatedly watched a Bollywood movie, especially Three Idiots, which is my favorite movie. So I'm very glad to be in India now. So today, actually, I just see the program, which this session supposed to be 11 by 11:30. And I prepared 20 minutes presentation. Since I will have another presentation tomorrow, I will try to brief as much as possible and to transfer some of the slides to tomorrow's presentation. So first, let me explain very briefly about APT. APT headquarters locates in Bangkok, Thailand. So I come from Bangkok, Thailand. And we have 38 member countries with around 140 so-called affiliate members from like ICT industry. So we have a strategic plan, which I will explain tomorrow. So I will skip it. And today's presentation, I will specifically focus on spectrum management like activities of ITU. So in connection to our strategic plan, there are 2 points which has some relationship with spectrum management. So one is connectivity, which is one of the 5 pillars of a strategic plan, and the other one is innovation. So accordingly, we have action plan under these pillars of a strategic plan. So these are maybe too detailed. So if you are very interested in, please visit the APT website, which explains in detail what we are doing. So with regard to spectrum management, or in the field of spectrum management, basically we have 5 activities or 5 items as an action. First and foremost, we have APT Conference Preparatory Group for WRCs, so-called APGs, to which we have many participants. If it is a physical meeting, we have usually more than 500 participants, and if it is a hybrid, we have 700 or 800 participants. So this is the biggest APT meeting. Then we have so-called AWG, APT Virus Group, which BB briefly introduced. And also we have APT Frequency Information System in-house, to which our members, we have 38 members in Asia and Pacific region, and we already asked some of our administrations to input or contribute their information into this AFIS system, so that in the future, all APT members can share information about the spectrum allocation in each country, so that the harmonization activities or efforts can be made more smoothly. And fourth, we have APT training programs, and APT training programs covers not only, of course, spectrum management things, but also many like standardization or the development, and like a disaster management or cybersecurity things. But in the field of spectrum management, every year we have 3 to 5 training courses in spectrum management, to which some of Indian institutions collaborate with us, with APT. In addition, we also organize the APT symposiums on spectrum management, as well as APT, so-called APT Web Dialogue on spectrum management. So with regard, so I will try to briefly introduce each from these 5 points, but as I said, I will try to skip it as much as possible. Then with regard to APG, we have a very prominent chairman who will introduce the activities of APG, I think in this afternoon. So I will skip it, and Dr. V is our chair and chairman. And I think he will kindly introduce what APG is doing. Then with regard to another second point, AWG, we have many activities as wireless or radio communication activities are very attractive for both policymakers or regulators and industry or academia. So we reconfigured our structure of AWG last year, 2021, on which we started to coordinate and discuss the related issues. Under this new structure, namely we have 4 working groups now, and also there are several sub-working groups as well as task groups. So every time we have a new trend or services or technologies, sometimes AWG tries to coordinate how to formulate their position as an APT, as well as to address the issues to be shared among those stakeholders of policymakers, regulators, and industry. Then let's come to the IAFI, which is, as I said, frequency information system in-house of APT. APT, with the collaboration of European countries, CEPT, we launched our AFIS system under AWG. So AWG actually fosters this AFIS system. Then another activity is APT Web Dialogue, the Web Dialogue series on spectrum management. So this is a very light touch activities. It's not decision making, but rather information or experience sharing. And this is very attractive and drew many attention from our members as well as in the public as a whole. So this year, in 2022, we organized these activities, as you see in the slide. So specifically, I would like to emphasize that we collaborate with even with non-APT members. But we are always welcome and open to collaborate with anyone. So this year, we collaborated with ICAO, or DSA, as well as Inmarsat or Meta. Sometimes, as you see, we collaborate not only organization or association, but also with specific companies, because it's not a decision-making process, but rather information sharing, as I said. So if you, as a, let's say, company or industry, have some idea or new technology or services which you want to share with APT members or APT participants, please contact to us and let's organize our APT Web Dialogue together with you. So next activity is training program. Training is one of the key activities of APT because in this region, Asia-Pacific region, of course, we have diverse member countries from big to small or landlocked to the developed to less developed countries. So, training course has many activities and a good amount of interest and request from our members. So in the field of spectrum management, we organize these activities such as spectrum management and monitoring in India. This was hosted in India. So as you see in the slide, other training courses were hosted by sometimes Thailand or Japan, and we always try to seek any possible potential partners to organize these training courses. For the time being, in India, we have 4 training institutions who we collaborate with in order to implement our training courses. So with this, I would conclude my first presentation, and please wait my second presentation tomorrow. Thank you very much.